Welcome to Spectrum Days, the games we played, a new podcast that takes a look at the games we played over 35 years ago. Call it retro or call it nostalgia. These are the games that shaped our lives. My name is Chris. I make games for mobile, and I'm here with my cousin Phil.
Good evening.
Phil used to sell console games for a living.
Certainly did.
So let me tell you about the format for this podcast. The show works like this. We'll reminisce about the game, talk from our memories and a few notes. Then, once we've waxed lyrical through our rose-tinted glasses, we'll take a pause. We'll play the game wherever we can find it. Maybe Phil will have the cartridge, maybe we'll use an emulator, but one way or other, we'll play it. Then, we'll come back and record part 2, where we tell you if they really were Spectrum Days or if our memories have failed us, if the game has stood the test of time or if it's unplayable dribble. So, Phil, what game have you got lined up for us today?
Well, thankfully, we are looking at rtype. Yes, a ubiquitous shoot-'em-up, a game that pretty much everyone has heard of. And right from the off, there's a very good reason for that, because this is a really unusual title where absolutely every single version that got ported to whatever machine you happen to have was amazing. Almost without exception, and that's really hard to say of any other game.
Even the Spectrum version?
Even the Spectrum, which is where I played it first.
Rubber keys and all?
No, I had the 128+2, but then that's because I was middle class.
Kempston Pro joystick?
No, I used the keyboard. How about yourself? What do you remember? What did you play it on first? Do you remember, Chris?
Good question. And I do remember rtype. The most vivid memory is the huge orange alien embryo mega boss that you've got to kill at some end of some stage. So that's the biggest, brightest memory. And maybe this is a good time to actually tell everyone that we've got my brother John on production and audio, who might pipe in every so often. And I did have to ask him, I said, well, can you remember where we played it? Because I'm amazed that I didn't play it on the Commodore Amiga. But looking around, I'm not even sure if there was a Commodore Amiga version. So then, if it wasn't the Amiga, it was the Sega Master System. And John tells me that he vaguely also remembers that we may have had it on the Master System. So that's where I think I played it.
Yeah, I mean, it did come out on everything. And I'm not surprised you don't remember. This is a long time ago, and we're very old men.
I was 14 years old. 14.
Yeah, I think you were like a whole 6 months older than me, so maybe I was 12 and a half or something. I do.
Let's do the maths.
Yeah,
on that
I'm not
6
even
months.
going to bother doing the maths, even with the help of being sat in front of a computer. I don't think I could work it out. But I do remember seeing it in the arcade, and it was an arcade game to begin with, and it was an IREM arcade game. It came out, according to my notes here, May the 15th, 1987, in fact.
But that was the arcade, right? So from what I've seen, 1988 was the home release.
Yes,
so that's why I'm basing my age off of.
Yeah.
Maybe we should just give a very quick overview of what type of game it is for people. Maybe we got some young people there who've never seen rtype.
I'd be absolutely amazed if people didn't know what it is. But yes, people who are younger than the age of 40-something, whatever we are now, nearly 50. Well, it's a shoot-'em-up, what we call a shoot-'em-up back then, or indeed a blaster. It was a left-to-right game. In fact, listening to the creator of the game, they sort of based it on the left-to-right games that were popular at the time. You blast off in your R9 Arrowhead to fight the evil Bido Empire, armed with a rapid-fire laser and a more powerful wave cannon. It was sort of one of those first games where it brought in that mechanic of actually sort of holding the fire button to build up this more powerful weapon, which of course put you in danger because you were having to hold the button down while waves of enemies were coming in, but you got that benefit when you let it go. It let off a much bigger wave that sort of killed everything on the screen. Along the way, you collect a helpful friend called Force, Again, one of those sort of games where it sort of introduced a lot of mechanics that hadn't really been seen before. Force was this ball which could either connect to the front or the back of the ship. And again, looking at interviews with the guy that made it, they actually wanted to make it encompass the entire ship, so top and bottom, as well as front and back, but memory issues were a problem. So it takes the form of a glowing ball, which can, as I say, attach to either end, and it also fires as well. So when you're pressing the fire button, if you're just sort of rapidly firing the button, it fires at the same rate that you do. So you can detach it and send it off out in front of you or out from behind you, or it can attach to the ship and absorb any fire that comes your way. It was an unusual shooter and something that we hadn't really seen before. It was graphically quite amazing, as I do distinctly remember seeing it in the arcade. I don't remember playing it in the arcade, but I do remember seeing it. And this is partly because shooters weren't necessarily my thing, but people my and Chris and John's age, that's pretty much all there was back in the day. It was shoot 'em ups, and racing games were about the only thing that really were in the arcade at the time. But when R-Type came along, it changed so many things that it was completely different thing. It was not Space Invaders. It just blew everything out of the water. It had different mechanics. It was a slower, more well thought out game. It wasn't all about speed. It was about learning the waves of attacks. It was turrets. It was things that were formed part of the background. Some of the stages, the entire stage was a boss. So I think it was like stage 3. I think you were actually maneuvering around an entire massive ship for the entire stage of the game. And each level, apart from that stage, had a massive end-level boss that was very, very different. And they were all quite organic, very inspired by H.R. Geiger, those sort of alien type images. And in fact, an interview I saw with the guy that created it, the idea for the ball, this force ball that attaches back and front, came from watching the dung beetle moving a piece of dung around. So this had this sort of friend, this thing that was part of you but not quite part of you. But amazing game.
But it just floated in directly in front of you, right? That ball, the force ball. Yeah, so you didn't, just so people know from my memory at least, you didn't, it's not as if you controlled it. There was no dual joysticks in those days. So it just floated directly in front of you.
Or behind.
Yeah, which was like amazing at the time. Whoa, I've got this extra thing.
And you
an
could
extension of my ship
in front of you and it would continue to fire.
Yeah.
And it was indestructible.
Yeah.
You took a hit, you died. I mean, this is what we were saying earlier about it being hard. R-Type was bang. No lives, no energy, bang. One hit, gone, dead.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, because with its origins in the arcade, the whole thing of you need to put in more money to continue, right? And infinite continues as long as you've got enough money.
Yeah.
So that the whole mechanic, the way the loop, the way those games work was just always like that, sort of trying to get some more money out of you.
Oh,
but and those graphics, I mean, like I said, I remember the big, as you just said, the aliens inspired graphics. And I was just trying to think, 14, I'm amazed that Aliens had come out a couple of years earlier. So that was 1986, Aliens. So I was 12. I'm amazed. I thought Aliens was, but I hadn't seen that. I hadn't seen that film. So I guess playing that kind of game, you look at those graphics now, anyone comparing it with a modern game, you think, well, there's not exactly realistic, realistic aliens. But for us at the time, that was like, whoa, this is awesome, right? Yeah. Those graphics are amazing. For us, that was immersion. We were really immersed in this alien world, this alien landscape. Yeah. So it was a fantastic looking game for its time.
To give it some historical context, as Chris grapples with how old we were back then, back in 1988, by the time it hit the sort of home market, The World Wide Web had just been talked about, the restructuring of the Soviet Union and perestroika, the Iran-Contra affair, the Troubles in Ireland, as we called it back then. NASA testifies to the US Senate that man-made global warming has begun. I mean, we were worried about these things back then. Actually, no, we weren't. We were children, but our parents were worried about this sort of thing. The Piper Alpha disaster. Do you remember that? The Seoul Summer Olympics. Yes, Seoul hosted the Summer Olympics back then. Fortunately, the song "Don't Worry, Be Happy" came out by Bobby McFerrin, although, of course, he did commit suicide later on. But yeah.
Which is the only thing I remember is the "Don't Worry, Be
Is
Happy"
that
song.
out of all those things? You don't
Of all
you
those
don't remember
things,
the Iran-Contra affair? You don't remember the Piper Alpha disaster? Really? You don't remember any of those things?
well, I remember, but I can't remember experiencing them or thinking of them when I was 14 playing
Do you
R-Type.
remember the
No.
films that came out? Okay, we got Beetlejuice, Twins, Big, Akira, Die Hard, Rambo 3, Willow, and Naked Gun.
Well, now you're talking. Now you're talking. Of course, 14-year-old me does
Your
remember
favourite was Big, wasn't
Die
it?
Hard.
Yeah. If you didn't watch Aliens, that means your favourite was Big.
Yeah, but I can't even remember. I mean, hey, everyone, remember we would have had VHS cassettes.
Yeah.
We would have to have gone to a Blockbusters if your town had a Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. We didn't have Blockbuster.
Well, our town was BR Sounds,
Exactly.
a local video rental store.
You look 18, you can have what you want, Sonny.
Yeah, exactly. So at 14, I would have had to have convinced my parents probably to rent us a film, and I don't think Die Hard was a Friday evening family film.
Really?
And of course, my brother's 3 years younger, so of course you got catered for an 11-year-old at the time. So
Willow
I'm pretty sure Willow it was.
Well, we may not remember the days, but I remember this game. I mean, like I said, I mentioned I did play it in the arcades, or so, I don't actually know. No, I tell you, I don't remember playing it in the arcades, but I remember seeing it in the arcades. And a bit like I mentioned earlier on, I love games, but I've never what I'd be called good at playing games. I very much an enjoyment kind of person when it comes to games. I haven't got time to put in the hours that it takes to get good at something like R-Type, but it was incredibly popular. And the place where I played it first, as far as actually owning it, would have been on the Spectrum. And the only reason I know that for sure is because only within the last 6 months, my parents found my collection of Spectrum games. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Spectrum, then the whole podcast called Spectrum Games, for God's sake, is the ZX Spectrum, the mighty Sinclair machine, the micro that really invigorated and kept us going over here back in the 80s when the crash was happening in the US. Will the bedroom coders over here were making games, and things progressed quite nicely. It was all on cassette. It was all on cassette tape. And the reason I know I had it is because, as I say, my parents found them in the loft, and there was R-Type. But it was on single cassette, not on double cassette. So that means I didn't buy it when it was full price, which probably would have been $8.95, $9.95. I had it on the sort of Mastertronic or whatever version with the single cassette version, which would have been the budget version. So probably $4.99 or $2.99 version of it, which then triggered the memory where I actually do remember playing it in the home was on a friend's either Amiga or ST. A friend of mine had both. Yes, it did come out on the Amiga. I know what Chris is about to ask, and it did. It came out on the ST and on the Amiga. It came out on the Commodore. It came out on the Spectrum. It came out on the Master System. It came out on the Amstrad CPC. It came out on the PC Engine or the TurboGrafx 16. It came out on absolutely everything. Pretty much 8-bit. The only 16 bits really that it came out on was the Amiga and the Atari ST. For some reason, it didn't come out on the Megadrive. It didn't come out on the Super Nintendo, but Super R-Type did, but it was a different version. So really the home version that I actually associated with was those 16-bit micros, the ST and the Amiga, but my own version of where I played it was on the Spectrum.
Well, now all my memories have all merged. Now you're making me think: did I play it on the Spectrum? Did I play on the Spectrum, the Commodore Amiga, or the Master System? I don't know. Maybe when I get to play it, it will jog my memory, and I'll be able to tell you all after the break. Do you own a cartridge version now? Do you have a Master System?
Yeah, I own it on the Master System, which was after the Spectrum was the sort of first console that I owned, and that version on the Master System is renowned for being very, very good. In the sort of pantheon of what the best versions, where it kind of goes PC Engine, TurboGrafx, was sort of pretty much arcade perfect, or renowned to be arcade perfect. The Master System was brilliant. A really, really very good version. Again, reviewed very, very, very well in all the magazines. Hence why I bought it, because it reviewed so well. Even though, like I mentioned earlier on, I'm hopeless at it. I was hopeless at it on the Spectrum. I was hopeless at it around my mate's house on the ST or Amiga. I can't remember which one of the two he had it on, because it's so blooming hard, but it was brilliant.
But he had an ST and an Amiga.
Yeah, not at the same time. He first had an ST, then he had an Amiga, which is why I say, unfortunately, I can't remember which he was on. I suspect if I had to put my life on it, it was probably the Amiga. So what do you think, Chris?
Well, I think this is a good point in the pod where we can pause and actually go and play the game.
I agree. I think if everyone at home wants to do the same thing, just press pause on whatever it is you're listening to us on. Go and play the game if you've got it. If not, try and find an emulator online and join us back here and see whether you feel the same as us about how you feel about it now after all these years of having not played R-Type. And we're back. Welcome to part 2 of the Spectrum Days podcast, where we were looking at R-Type. To those of you who pressed pause and joined in by playing the game, thank you very much. And those of you who didn't, don't worry. You're about to hear mine and Chris's, and maybe even John will chirp in with a little bit of details about R-Type. Yeah, did we like it or didn't we? Did it live up to our expectations? Have we ruined our childhoods? And for those of you who did join in and play the game, we'll have some details at the end how you can contact us and let us know what you thought. And for those of you who are watching this and listening to this on YouTube, well, let us know in the comments, what version did you play? What system did you play it on? Or did you play it on an emulator? And talking of which, Chris, well, how did you play it?
Well, I played through RetroPie through the emulator, and I played the Master System version. And the very first thing was that it was a pleasure. It just loaded so quickly. It was you could just jump straight into the game. Straight into the game. No cutscenes, no movies, a story. I don't know. I'm flying a ship and I'm blasting things straight away. That was my first. It's like, wow, I could get into the game straight away.
Is that the version now, do you think you've had, because I know we were talking earlier on in the podcast on memories of where we played it. Do you think now that's sort of where you played it most was the Master System?
Yeah, I think so. I also tried playing the Spectrum version, but I didn't get past the turn to tape 2 or turn the tape over messages. I couldn't get it running on the emulator. I could have spent some more time looking, but seeing some screenshots of the Spectrum version, I'm not sure if it was really worth it. So I continued with the Master System version, and yeah, I think that was the one we played. Yeah, I think that was the one I played at home.
So you were trying to load a virtual tape version of the Spectrum. Is that what you were doing?
Yes. Yeah. When you try and load the ROM on the emulator, it'll still say stop tape, and then it says rewind side 2 and press any key. And I just didn't get past that. Maybe I should have looked for an online emulator or something, but no, I decided that this Master System version was from my Spectrum days, my youth, and this is the one I decided to play.
Good for you. Well, it's in fact exactly the same for me, though. I did play it on original cart. It's one of the few games I've got on the Master System. I've got a modded Master System 2, which allows you to switch it over to 60 hertz. All us poor people over in the UK, all you lot in America had 60 hertz, and we're playing games at the proper speed. But over here in the UK, back in the day, we were playing stuff on 50 hertz, so much slower. You might think, oh, that would help with R-Type and make it easier, but no. I can guarantee you now, after having played it 50 hertz and 60 hertz on original hardware, it didn't make a jot of difference. I was tempted to play it on the Spectrum as well, but I didn't bother because, frankly, that is where I used to play it the most, and I sort of knew that version pretty well. The other physical version I've got is on the Game Boy. So I played that one as well. I probably actually played that the most this weekend, not in general back in the day, but this weekend, simply because obviously you can take the Game Boy anywhere. It's just easy to just turn it on when you want.
Well, I was tempted to look. I did look at the iPhone versions. I was tempted to play that for exactly the same reason. Just be able to quickly pick it up, play it, and sort of doing other things. Blah blah blah. I just couldn't bring myself to it. I knew that a shoot 'em up with touchscreen controls, just dragging the R-Type with your finger covering the screen, so you wouldn't even be able to see anyone shooting at you from behind or attacking you from behind, which they do. I mean, there's got to be some moments in R-Type which is just got to be impossible with a touchscreen. It's bad enough as it is. We are, using the D-pad. There's so many sprites, so many little red balls of laser blasts going around. You just get destroyed, killed time after time, again and again. I mean, I think, I don't know about you, but I think it was trying to tell me a lesson about greed. If you try and shoot every enemy on screen, you will die. If you try and get every power up, you will die. There I am. I'm just focused on the goal, focused on getting that next upgrade, focused on killing someone else. Bam, dead again.
Yep. There you are. That's R-Type in a nutshell. So you can pretty much end the podcast there, really.
I'm pretty sure that was the developer. We're gonna make this game, but it's really a moral about greed. I'm sure that was their that was their real message, right? It wasn't this alien world, and but it was. That was my main thing, is that it's very, very difficult. You need the power ups. I mean, your ship starts off way too slow, right? You need to get that first power up. So what do the little things that you have to kill to get the power ups? What do they remind you of? Because in my mind, I've got
eyeballs on legs.
Yeah, they kind of. I don't know why, but I think of them as being like chickens. I don't know why, but you're right.
Yeah, sort of a froggy. Yeah.
And there's a few
suppose they designed it so that it would, from a design point of view, I suppose it's easier to hit because they've got a very distinct pattern. They stop, they jump, and stop somewhere before it jumps again, like a frog. So I suppose you can learn its pattern.
Yeah, and if you get stuck in the top left of the screen and you know that one's coming down on the bottom, and then they never get near the top of the screen, you know that you've got to get down and kill it, because if you get to the end of level boss without all the upgrades, it's a waste of.
That's it. You must turn it off.
Yeah, you're not going to get it done, right? So there you are. You've got to take that risk. So it's all about risk and reward. The whole gameplay is: shall I take this risk? Is the reward big enough? Risk, reward, or as I said, greed.
Yeah,
greed. It's a game about greed.
In the first part of this podcast, and I admit it was probably mainly me because I've played so many versions of it, I was extolling the virtues of how well this game was ported to absolutely everything. But the trouble is with how well it was ported is that they ported the arcade game. Now, normally when you get a port of an arcade game, they'll say, right, okay, this game, it's an 80s arcade game, was very much designed to keep people pumping money into it because you pretty much can't get off the first level. Yeah. Until you've played it a lot, you just can't get off the first level. Yeah. So that's an arcade game in a nutshell. It's designed to keep you there and keep putting money into it. You have to learn every single pattern, every movement of those fluttery looking innocent red butterfly enemies on the first level, and then all of that ground enemy is going to come in, because it's the same every time. It's not roguelike, there's no change, there's no difference. It's the same patterns every time, and you can learn the patterns. It's one of those sorts of game. It's not a bullet hell. There actually isn't that many bullets. It's more about enemies on the screen and knowing where they are.
Not that many bullets.
Well, compared to a bullet hell, hence parenthesizing my comment with the bullet hell type games. But the usually when they port it to the consoles or PC or whatever, they make it so that it's a bit easier, so you can play it in the home. So you're not putting money in. They put perhaps infinite continues. But the ports are so accurate to the arcade. You just got like the sort of 2 continues. I think you got 3 lives, 2 continues. And like you say, if you don't get all the power-ups and you then somehow, some miracle, you get to the end of the level, you're dead anyway. Yeah. So you think, oh, well, I might as well just kill myself. So it's one of those games where you get to a certain point, right, well, I haven't got all the power-ups. There's no point me continuing. I mean, you just right. Well, I'll end the game. I'll start again.
Yeah, you just resign yourself to starting again right from the beginning. Because if you've used a continue and you've not got off the first level, you're nowhere near going to complete the game. So let's just start again. So, did you remember the controls? Did you remember when you started playing it?
Yeah, there was no problem with that. I mean, I think anyone who perhaps didn't join in and play it or hasn't played it before is making it sound like it's complicated. It's not hard because it's complicated. And I actually remembered quite a few of the patterns simply because I had played that first damn level a million times. I remembered where everything was. I knew that, right, I've got to get the power-ups. It is all about your ship being fully powered up by the end of the level. And it's so cruel. It's actually quite easy in one way, that it actually does have save sort of points. So you'll get a certain distance, and if you then restart, you'll respawn in that same place. It doesn't make you go right back to the beginning of the level, but it takes away all your weapons. So you've started at a point further on in the level, but now you don't have the opportunity to get all the power-ups to get to the end of the level boss with all the power-ups. It's just so cruel. It's just
absolutely. Absolutely. No, I agree. As soon as I fired it up, the music, and I'm coming into the music, was like, okay, yeah, it just all comes flooding back, right? And then I remembered, because when we were speaking about it in the first part, I didn't remember that there was the Mega Blast, I don't know, where you hold down the fire button and you can build up a bigger laser blast.
Wave or something it's called?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I say, there's no story, there's no text. Back in those days, remember everyone, to understand if there's a story or whatever, or even instructions, maybe, you'd look in the box, you'd read instructions. Yeah. So there is nothing saying why you're killing these aliens. We don't know if these might be just friendly aliens defending themselves, and we're out there in the universe destroying. They look a bit aggressive, but maybe we're the aggressor.
So it's a parable about good and evil, and we're the evil in the end.
Good, evil, and greed. Yeah, okay. This is what it's all about. That's what I read into it anyway. So it kind of like, oh yeah, I remember this big blast, and then it's about that risk reward. Do you hold, because you have to hold down the fire button for a couple of seconds to build up the bigger blast, but that bigger blast then flies through all the aliens that are destructible. So you kind of like, okay, I'm going to line this up and kill all those on the screen. So I'll start the first level for about the first 20%, I guess, of the first level, trying to do that. And then all of a sudden, I've missed one. And then you're back to tapping the button as fast as possible to shoot as many as you can.
Immediately start panicking.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then once you do get that power up and get the orb, which I've forgotten its official name, and I think in the first part we talked about that, I couldn't quite remember how you controlled that. And you don't control it, but it doesn't, but you can fire it off and bring it back as well. So you can control it more than I remembered, because you can,
like a sort of dog.
Yeah, because you fire it
Call
out
it
and then
back.
it's slower. Yeah, and it's slower than you are in a way, like when it responds when you go up and down. So you'll be able to get basically in. You'll be able to shoot in parallel. So you can get your firepower in parallel like that. But then you can bring it back to you and use it as a shield. That's
Mm,
good. You can
that's
also
right.
then place it on the back, so you can fire with some of the power ups on the back.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's fire ups with the missile launcher, laser which shoots out at angles, and once you get that, like the first level, once you get all powered up, the first level is like, yeah, I've got this, and
You're
then you get
homing
to
missiles as well, isn't it? One of
yeah,
them's yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then you get to the end of level on the first end of level boss, first level, shoot the first eye, that's all right. Shoot your orb into its stomach to make sure you're killing the green alien coming out of the alien. So there's a big
Yeah.
orange alien, and he's got another green alien coming out.
Sorry
And
for all the technical words we're using.
and then yeah, but that's really difficult because he's shooting. He's got a
Sort of
kind of
tail
serpent.
flipping at you
Yep,
and yeah.
exactly. And I think this weekend I got past that end of level boss once.
Well done.
Once.
Sorry, how many times?
Once. But I've got to say, I'm still enjoying it. It's so quick. I think that's the thing. Like making mobile, making games for Android and iOS. That's kind of one of the golden rules is to make sure that the game loads very quick and that you can get to play as quickly as possible, because otherwise people drop off. People haven't got the patience.
Yeah.
And I think an anecdote, I guess, playing games back in the late 80s with my family and things. Like I remember my dad seeing the first, maybe the Amiga games or PC games where it said loading, and he was like, but didn't we say goodbye to loading when we said goodbye to the Spectrum? Because you'd have to
Right.
load a tape on the Spectrum. You'd take ages to get the
10
game ready.
minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then we got the Master System and the Megadrive, and like games running off of cartridges load fast. You don't see loading screens. They just play.
Mm.
Then we went back into the times of games having to load them into fast memory, into RAM, and then so you need that loading time, decompressing time, and games were taking longer. And now we've got all the cutscenes and we've got everything, all the paraphernalia just to get going. And this was like a breath of fresh air, really. And I'm still, even though it's difficult, I think I'm still going to play it a few more hours this week.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, my question was going to be, but did you find it addictive?
I found it fun. It's infuriating. A few swear words were muttered. I accidentally dropped the controller once or twice.
Mm-hmm. Did you drop it on a wall or a door?
It was,
I can't do that with my Game Boy. It's too expensive. I've got to throw my Game Boy across the room.
So yeah, it's frustrating, but it's just I want to just one more. It's one of those one more go. Just one more go.
Yeah,
one
that's
more.
exactly
I could do
how I
it.
would describe it. Yeah, yeah. It really is a one more go game. Which, going back to what started this section of us talking, is it's an arcade game. It sounds obvious to say it because it is. That's where it started, but it fulfills all the tropes of an arcade game. You just want to play one more go, and it's beautiful enough. It's interesting enough. It's impressive enough that you want to see what's on the next screen. You want to see those big bosses, and the weapons are insane. You do feel for the brief 3 seconds that you're alive with all of the power-ups, you feel like a god. You are shooting lasers that are bouncing and going in all directions, just killing everything in front of you, homing missiles. You feel completely invincible, and your pod thing at the front's massive and spinning round, and
Yeah. So for you, has playing it again in 2022 ruined your memory, ruined your childhood, or is this a good one?
This is a fantastic game. It's a game that I would say holds up. I think in when listening to other people sort of talk about games, talking to friends about games, or listening to other programs, it's a phrase that gets, I think, used, which is "it holds up," which it does. It's still a very good example of a shooter. It's a much copied shooter. It set down, I think, a lot of the sort of groundwork for those types of shooters. And I find, from when did we say it came out? 87 in the arcade. I can't think of many games of this type which were as good a shooter as this is. But also, again, like I said, shooters weren't the sorts of games that I was attracted to, which I think is also a good thing about R-Type, that it was one that I played, wanted to play. Everyone really, 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 really liked it. And I've got it now physical, 2 copies of it. I don't have many games across my physical collection that are the same games. Like if I've got a Master System and a Megadrive, well, there aren't any games that are the same, although there are plenty of games that came out on the Master System that also came out on the Megadrive. But R-Type is one that I have bought on, several different versions from several different, even though it's exactly the same game. So, I mean, that's how good it is. That's quite rare in my collection to find something that's the same title across different formats. But I hate it because it's so flipping hard. Drives me up the wall. I mean, absolutely. It's just like Chris said, it's a very sweary game. I was shouting top of my voice, using every word under the sun, playing this stupid game. I got to level 3 once.
And you've been playing it in black and white, right? Monochrome. You've been playing it on a monochrome
on the Game Boy, yes. On the Game Boy, yeah. But it's equally as good on it. That's what's so annoying. I mean, like now you can take your Switch, you can have your Switch plugged into your telly and then take it up to your bedroom and just play it handheld and you're playing the same game. Well, R-Type, in a weird kind of way, is like that. I was playing it on the Master System on my screen, on the television, and then I could go and play the one on the Game Boy, and there was no appreciable difference. It's exactly the same game. That really, it's just black and white. But it was just as annoying, just as frustrating, but just as brilliant. And you wanted to see the next level.
Well, there's no need for cloud save or anything modern anyway, because you just got to start a game always. There's no.
I mean, I was even thinking to myself, surely I could make this easier on myself by playing it with a turbo pad. But then I thought, no, a turbo pad would just make the force beam thing go off. It wouldn't do a rapid fire. I don't think it would work. I don't know. Maybe someone out there can let us know whether that would work. Because I would tell you, by the end of playing it for the weekend, my thumb and my wrist and my elbow, I get a bit of RSI from my day job anyway. But honestly, constantly pressing fire, because there's no water. You can't just hold your button. If you hold the button down, you're just doing the force beam. So you have to completely, constantly, the entire time you're playing, you are just pressing that button the whole time.
Yeah.
And I genuinely was. It's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm so old. I cannot play shooters anymore.
Well, one of the other shooters I can think of from that time is probably Xenon 2 Mega Blast on the Amiga.
Mega Blast, yeah.
Mega Blast. That I must have played a lot. And that's and also because of the music, that was Mega Blast. Exactly. Bomb the Bass, Mega Blast. That was a kind of pop culture moment, I guess. Like kind of interesting crossover.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Xenon 2 Mega Blast.
I think that came out on the Mega Drive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And maybe I think
it even came out on the Master System. Again, someone could correct me on that.
I'm pretty sure I would have played it on the Commodore Amiga. Maybe that's one we can talk about in the future. 1942 as well, another shooter, a plane.
Yeah, that's an up-screen, the arcade World War II pilot-y thing. Yeah, which again, another exactly the same arcade game. very difficult, but very, very good. And again, designed to get you to put the money in. But that was a vertical shooter.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
I think we ought to mention that there was a lot of follow-ups to it. And I got some of those on physical. I've got R-Type Final, which I think, as the name suggests, was meant to be the sort of last R-Type game, which I believe was a PS2. I've got physical. I'm not sure if it came out on anything else other than the PS2, but I've got it on PS2. So there are much more modern, advanced, super duper versions of R-Type. I just say super. Of course, the other one we mentioned earlier on in the podcast was the Super Nintendo one, was Super R-Type. But they're all as hard. Annoyingly, they all look amazing, and I in conclusion, for me, yes, I agree. I absolutely do love this game, and as I say, I've got 4 versions. I've got the Super one, and I've got, as I say, the one on the PlayStation. So I've got 4 physical versions of this game, and I cannot get past about level 3 on any of them.
Yeah, it's amazing that the pixel art, when you look at the it's so simple, really. What they did on the ship that you control, everything really, just it's just a small amount of pixels. Everything they've done, those new versions, the later versions you talk about, I think there's some which are in 3D. But playing it, I don't miss better graphics. It's just fun game, easy to pick up, really infuriatingly difficult. But like I say, I could just get into it. It's quick to get back into it. When you're game over, you can start again. But yeah, it's been fun. I like that one.
Yeah, I agree. More of these, please. Apart from perhaps something we can get past level 3 would be good.
I mean, so I think I've enjoyed R-Type. I've enjoyed playing that. That's not destroyed my childhood memories. That's one that holds up, I believe, and I would play again. I'd like to try and get past level 2. What game should we look at next, Phil?
I think it makes sense to take advantage of the upcoming holiday that is Halloween and to look at something a bit spooky. So why not Ghouls and Ghosts?
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you then.
At least that's an easy one. If you'd like to hear more of this, then please do encourage us by subscribing. That way you won't miss out on the next episode. And of course, like and comment, which will help us get visibility in the podcast algorithms. If there's a game you'd like us to talk about, drop us a note in the comments or send us an email here at hello@spectrumdays.com.